morning, and thank you very much for coming to this session about a progressive delivery in the Kubernetes era. So, well, basically my idea is to show you some techniques that you can use, yeah, mostly in Kubernetes, but if you are not using Kubernetes, you'll see that you can also apply them. My name is Alex Soto, my Twitter is Alex Soto B, my email is soto@redhat.com. If you've got any question, of course, you can raise your hand. I will be also around the venue today, so feel free to stop me. But also you can send me an email, there is no problem. And I'm also the co-author of all these books that maybe what you are really interested here. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I would say that probably some AI thought that my books are not interesting. The problem is that, let me. Oh, no. Yes. Okay, this is the, maybe it's that I'm pushing. Well, the important books here probably for you is this one, the GitOps cookbook, but this book, and this book, you can download it, all them for free. If you go to developers.redhat.com and you register, then you can download, the GitOps cookbook, the Ansible book, or the AI for Java development. But let's just start a bit of what we are going to see today, a bit of, progressive delivery techniques, some Kubernetes as well, and finally, some thoughts about some of the techniques that you're going to see, because you'll see that they say, hey, these techniques are super cool, but yeah, there are some things that make it a bit risky. Okay, so first of thing that we need to think about it is that our code should be in production, not here in our, in our environment. We are super nice, right? We can run it in our local development environment. It works in pre-production. Also, it's nice to deploy there. But the great thing about production, about our code, is that it should be in production. Okay, so we need to think about, okay, we need to move our code from our Mickey Mouse environments to a more real environment, and we need to deliver there this product. And well, probably most of you already been using continuous integration, continuous delivery. The continuous integration part is this one where you build your service, your application, then you run some tests, usually the unit tests, some component tests. Also, I always say that some end-to-end tests are great to put it there, because you need to be able to be sure that it works. Then some security checks, static code analysis and so on. And finally, we release. And this release nowadays is, okay, you built a container image and you push this container image to an image registry, right? So you release there your container. Then it comes the continuous delivery part, which is like, okay, I'm going to deploy this to my staging environment, then it's there working. And after that, it's super annoying this way. Let me change the port, maybe. I don't know. Let's see. Let's see if now it's better. Then we deploy, to this pre-staging environment, and then we do our end-to-end tests, acceptance tests, and so on, and then we move to production environment. The problem is how we move to production environments. Okay, I want to put this into production environment, but I need to make it work. And well, if you are old enough, probably you've been using something like FTP to move your application to production. I did it in the past, in my early years, that you have a Word file and you just copy this Word file into a lib directory. Yeah, maybe you say, yeah, no, we are using rsync, which is far more secure. Okay, it's basically the same. Okay, nowadays, we are not in that phase. Probably you're using Kubernetes and you're using maybe kubectl apply to move to production, which is fairly the same thing as FTP, right? Because you're just applying something. Or you say, no, we're doing something automatically and we are using GitOps. Okay, in any case, maybe, you've got these two options. I'm going to try another thing, just. Sorry? Yeah? Okay. Well, let's keep it in this one. Then, okay, you can use GitOps, you can use kubectl, doesn't matter, it works. But what's happened when you move to production, that you need to have some strategy, because if not, it's going to happen the apocalypse, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to move this new version to production, and boom, everything blows. And you may say, well, Alex, this is not happening to me. Or, I'm just working in a super big tech company and this is not happening to us. Well, yeah, until you are Microsoft and you decide that it would be a good idea to update all the systems that can control, in this case, an airport. And yeah, this was this year, and I stayed like 4 days in Berlin, stuck there waiting for a plane, right? So yeah, this happens, and basically happened because they didn't have any delivery strategy for this update. It was just like, let's update all the systems and see what happened. Okay, great, it's a strategy, but as you can see, it's not the best strategy. And this is what we are going to try to solve today with progressive delivery. And as the name suggests, it's delivering or software or services progressively to the users, to the end users. So you can see that there is no big bang. So it's not that I put a new version there and see what's happened. No, this is not happening anymore. It's based on the concept that deploy and release are two different phases. Again, when I was starting, moving, or deploying using FTP, for me, making a deploy or making a release was exactly the same. Nowadays, deploy and release are totally different. Deploy is the process of, let's say, boot up or start the service in the production environment. But you are not sending public traffic there. It's just, put it there, a system there, running in production. But then there is the release phase. The release phase is where you start sending the public traffic to this new service. So the concepts are two different. You deploy to production, right? But then you do not release. You just have your piece there running in your production environment. So that's what I was saying, that deploy and release is a different thing. That's the first thing. The other thing that now it's really important is the metrics. So if deploy and release are different things, so I deploy to production, then I start releasing, so I start sending traffic to a small subset of users. I move progressively my application from one version to another version. I need to find some metrics that I can say, version 1 is better than version 2. So I need to capture all these metrics so I can compare, okay? Maybe the metrics can be the error rate, or maybe it's, I don't know, performance, whatever, okay? But this is super important. If you are thinking about moving from just doing a big bang releases to a progressive delivery release, then you need to, before that, knowing what are the metrics for version 1, version 2, from old version to new version, to know if one version behaves better than the other one. What is the important thing about progressive delivery? First of all, that you decreases downtimes, because you have both versions deployed in production. See that I'm having the old version deployed in production. I've got the new version deployed in production. Both are there. Both are coexistent, but I only sending a small portion of traffic to the new version. So if an error happens, can happen, true, but the only thing that I need to do is just move all these new users to the old version. Only this. Also limits the tragedy, right? You are not affecting all the airports of the world. No, you're not doing this. You're just affecting this small group of users. And this makes you put into production your new services faster, because you're going to get more confident when in this process of moving from, from pre-production to production. You're getting confident. You say, hey, look, we've been doing this for the last 6 months and always worked really well. So let's increase our pace of moving things to production. So what delivery techniques we've got? Because we've got a lot of delivery techniques, right? Here today, I'm just going to explain you some of them, okay? As I said before, they are generic. You can apply it in Kubernetes or in any other system. But in this case, the demo is going to be using Kubernetes. The first one, probably most of you know, is the blue-green deployment. It's a really old technique, which basically it's like, okay, I've got these two versions, the blue and the green version. Maybe this is version 1, this is version 2. And both are, as you can see, deployed to production. Okay? The blue and the green are in production, but it's only released the blue one. Okay? The blue one is receiving all the traffic. Then you deploy this green version into your production environment, and then basically you switch to the green. You just change this switch, and done. You've been released from one version to another one. If there is an error in the green one, you detect, hey, look, there is a performance regression. You can always switch back to the old version. You only need to update again this router, okay, and all done. This works. It was really popular when we were working with virtual machines, because the blue was a virtual machine, the green was another virtual machine, so you would have two virtual machines, and then you just move the traffic from one virtual machine to another. The problem is that it was an all or nothing approach. So you have all the traffic going to the blue, and then at some point you have all the traffic going to the green. If there is an error in a green, yeah, you can really quick, roll back to the old version, but all your users are affected with the problem. So we created the canary release concept, which basically it's more or less the same, but instead of sending all the traffic to the blue or all the traffic to the green, you start sending a percentage of traffic, right? So maybe you send 90% of the traffic to the old version, 10% of the traffic to the new version, to the green one. And here is what I mentioned it before, that it's super important to have a good metrics. Because I'm sending 90% of the traffic to old version, 10 to the new version. Now I need to know if the new version is better than the old version. If I see that the error rate of the new version is increased, then I know that this new version is not good. So what I need to do is say, okay, let's just stop the canary release. Let's move these 10% of users to the old version, and let's fix the problem. But usually, the new version will work correctly, and then the next step is to start sending, for example, 20% to the old version, 80% to the old version, 20% to the new version, right? So we are progressively moving the users from the old version to the new version. You can say 80-20, 50-50, 40-60, and so on, till you move all your users from the old version to the new version. And this is I will say that this is the correct way of doing it. And it works while you've got only maybe, I don't know, 1 request per second, 10 requests per second. Yeah, that's fine. But if you are Google, Amazon, or any of these big techs that has a lot of requests per second, you can see that if you've got 1,000 requests per second and you're sending 10% of the users to the new version, then if there is an error, if there is a regression, 100 users will be affected by this problem. So the technique is good, works, but depending on the amount of traffic that you've got, okay, you might have some problems. And Google, Amazon created this set of techniques that are under the umbrella of dark launches. Basically, dark launches is a techniques that let you, let's say, test your application in production without the end user noticing it, right? For example, the first technique is mirroring traffic. Mirroring traffic is a technique where you've got, again, 2 versions, the old one and the new one, and you see that I receive a request, and the router sends the request to the old version and also to the new version. Okay, I'm just duplicating the request to both systems. But if you see, in the blue one, there is a bidirectional arrow, which means that I send the request, I wait for the response, and I send back the response. So everything works as expected. The old one, there is only an unidirectional arrow, because what I'm doing here is a fire and forget request. I'm just saying, I send the request, but I don't care about the response. Why? Because what I want to do is test my new application with the new, with the request, with a request that I can compare with the old version. In this case, for example, I could start comparing the performance of the blue and the green. But all the users always have the response from the old version, the one that I know that it works. This is known as a mirror traffic technique. It works really well. Of course, you've got a problem, is that you need double of the resources, right? Because you're sending 2 requests. But you are able that your users are testing your application for you. Because if you detect some kind of errors, then you see that, oh, look, this new version is not working really well. Let's undeploy it and just test it more. And your end user will never notice that. Another technique is dark canaries. Dark canaries is similar as canary release, but instead of being random, because in this case you're saying 90%, in a canary release you're saying 90%, 10%, 80, 20, and so on. Instead of this, what you can do is add a flag. Okay, at the flag it says, if this flag is true, then I move to the new one. If not, I send to the old one. And this technique is widely adopted by Facebook. Basically, every Facebook employee has a Facebook account. And what Facebook is doing is saying, okay, if you are an employee and you're entering into Facebook, then I redirect you to the version that I'm going to release the next week. Because you know that big features are released I think that it's every Tuesday in Facebook, okay? So basically they're saying, okay, this is what we're going to deploy the next Tuesday, but if you are a Facebook employee, then you are going to help me test this new application. So just saying, okay, you go to facebook.com, you're a Facebook employee, then move to the new version. If not, move to the old version, okay? So this is another way of doing these dark launches, putting some, let's say, logic of how to send the traffic. And this could be you are a Facebook employee, or it could be you sign it for better features, or maybe it's because I've got an agreement with my customer, and I said, hey, do you want to test the latest and greatest thing? And maybe your customer say, yes, I would love that. Then you put here this true, right? It's like if the customer is this one, then move to the new version. Another technique is filter flags. The truth is that I really don't like filter flags, so for this reason I do not explain it. I don't like because at the end you end up by populating your code full of conditionals. You need to manage all the flags, and at the very end the flags leave it there for years, and let's say that your code keeps a lot of unmaintainable after some time. So just to mention that you've got filter flags, but it's something that personally, I'm not saying that it's wrong, I'm just saying that personally, I will not do it. But, and one of the things that you should be aware that if you want to start doing progressive delivery, because you say, hey, there's a lot of great ideas out there, don't say to your manager, or just keep in mind to not mention this to your managing, that progressive delivery is testing in production. So you are using production environment for testing your application, which means that production is not sacrosanct anymore. Historically we thought that production is, this environment that nobody can touch, and well, in this case you are deploying maybe once per day to production. You are deploying, not releasing, but deploying, and you start, let's say, playing with production environments. So just keep in mind this. Don't tell to your manager that you are doing testing in production, because if you think about it, testing in production, I like to say that this is the new testing parameter. We are used to think about like unit test, component test, and end-to-end test, right? This is what we all doing. The truth is that when you start adopting all these progressive delivery techniques, testing in production techniques, you end up writing a lot of tests. One is the pre-production tests, which are the blue ones, which are tests that usually you run, or you might run in your development computer, or maybe in your CI/CD system, Jenkins, GitHub Actions, Tekton, whatever you use, right? Like component test, contract test, acceptance test, mutation test, all this kind of test is something that you run before you move the application to production. But then we've got 3 more columns of tests. One is the deployment test. These are the tests that you run when you deploy your application to production. Remember, you deploy to production, but you are not sending public traffic yet. And usually I put there the integration test. Some people ask me, why are you putting integration tests in the deployment test and not in the pre-production test? The reason is that usually these integration tests are tests that you run against the database. So what is the purpose of writing tests that runs tests against a database that it's empty? You populate with the exact data that you require, running on an empty environment or a standalone environment. So it has not much sense. So integration tests needs to run against real data. So for this reason, I said that, okay, if you want to run integration tests, use integration tests in the database that is running in production, because there is where you're going to get the real integration, not with a empty database or with a vanilla database there running with nothing. There is also some techniques like tab compare, load test, shadowing, config test. Deploy, you see that the shadowing is the mirroring traffic, okay? Then, when you release your application, so when you start sending traffic to this new application, you've got more techniques like canarying, dark canaries, monitoring, feature flagging, exception tracking, feature graduation. So there is a lot of other techniques that we can use in release phase. And finally, and that's really important, we've got the post-release phase. In most of the cases, or most of the companies that I work, when you release to production, the testing is over. Okay, I've got version 1.1 to production. Okay, let's move to 1.2. So no more test in 1.1. When you start with this testing in production, progressive delivery, and so on, you still need to test your application when it's released to production with techniques like team profiling, logs, couch testing. That was super popular by Netflix, right? That was done a long time before, but couch testing is another example of post-release testings. Monitoring, as I said, super important always to monitor your application, because this is how you can verify that the old version and the new version, which works better, right? So if you don't monitor, you never know if the new one works better than the old one. And there's also tracing, auditing, on-call experience, and also journey tests. And this is an example of monitoring, because most of you probably are thinking monitoring in terms of technical measurements, right? For example, CPU, or memory, or error codes, right? Things like that. But also the monitoring can be business, if you will, yeah, or business logic, okay? In this case, this is a real case of Netflix. This is the number of times that the user pushes the play button. And you see that there are two colors, red and black. Red is the new version, black is the old version. And you can see that more or less both of them behaves in the same way, which means that, okay, probably the old version, the new version works pretty similar. But suppose that now the new version gets some high error rate. Then probably user will not be able to push buttons in the same frequency. So then we will detect that this graph is different, and you say, something is weird with the new version. So should I continue with the delivery or not, right? So this is super important. This is what I mentioned, that move to always monitor your applications, and not necessarily needs to be technical monitoring. It can be also some business monitoring. So, okay, that's great. We've got the techniques. Let's see how we can apply some of them in Kubernetes. Yeah, we can do blue-green deployment. Yes, nowadays we can do blue-green deployment with Kubernetes. You create a Kubernetes service. You see that you've got this selector. In this case, the selector is in service my app v1. And then I've got here my version 1, which you see that the label is exactly the same. So this means that this Kubernetes service is going to send all the traffic to this deployment, of this Kubernetes deployment. Okay, now, if I deploy a version 2, the label is going to be app my app v2, and the only thing that I need to do is change the label, right, of the new deployment to be, or the service to be my app v2. So I can do this kind of thing, right? With Kubernetes, I can play with labels to route the traffic to one pod or to another pod. Okay, that's one way. We've got another one, which is the canary releases. How can I do canary releases with Kubernetes? Okay, yeah, that's harder, but you can still do it. You can just take, kubectl scale deployment v1 to 3 replicas and v2 to 1 replica. Now, you've got 75% of the traffic to v1, 25% of the traffic to v2. And then you can just start, changing the replicas. Now you could put replicas 2.2, replicas 1.3, replicas 0.4. Yeah, okay. I know that it's not very fancy, but you can still do it. But you see that, okay, that's great, but I would like to have something more easy, let's say. And just suppose that we've got a technology in Kubernetes that lets you do things like that. I've got a new, let's say a new kind, name it virtual service. I've got a service, name it recommendation, and I say, hey, I want to send the traffic, 75% of the traffic to v1, 25% of the traffic to v2. You see that it's much easier, right, than just having to play with the scales. How about shadowing traffic? This is something you cannot do it with Kubernetes. What happens if I want to send the traffic to v1 and also to v2, but v1 is a request response, but v2 is a fire and forget request? How about this? Just have, hey, I've got a service named recommendation, and I want to send all the traffic to version 1, but I also want to mirror the traffic to version 2. Much easier than just having, to implement some kind of, proxies in the middle or things like that. Or how about dark canaries? Things like, I've got my recommendation service, but now what I want to do is send the traffic to recommendation v2 if the end user is Alexandra. If not, send it to v1. So you see that you can do this dark canary by just explaining how you want to send the traffic. You put it here. In this case, I'm using HTTP header, but you could use any other method. But in this case, usually you do it with HTTP header. Maybe you put headers, name it tested or testing, and you put testing true, go there. If not, go to the v1. How you can implement all this stuff, all this magic with Istio, okay? Istio is a service mesh. It's a project, okay, that you need to install into your Kubernetes cluster. You will need Kubernetes administrator privileges, but then when you've got installed, anyone can use it. What is the great thing about Istio? First of all, is that it's polyglot. It means that you install it in your cluster and works with any language. You can use one service in Python, another one with Java, another one with JavaScript, and it works in the same way. You do not need to change anything. It lets you do intelligent routing and load balancing. As I said in the previous slides, you are able to apply these YAML files to do canary releases or dark launches. It also lets you implement or apply fault injection principles like, I don't know, random failures, things like that. Also implements resiliency. It implements circuit breaker, automatic retries, timeouts. All these features are implemented into Istio. So your code doesn't need to implement any circuit breaker strategy. It's implemented into Istio. You only need to configure, and that's all. You've got all the observability, and here it's the key point. If you want to use Istio and you want to sell it to your manager, probably your manager don't care about all these things. They don't care. But this one is the one why all our customers in Red Hat is using Istio, for the security. Because with Istio, you're able to communicate between services using HTTPS. But what's the key point here is that your services will never manage HTTPS. Will only work with HTTP. And Istio, under the covers, will take the HTTP, encrypt, transform to HTTPS, do the communication with the other service, and then Istio automatically will unwrap HTTPS, convert it to HTTP, and do the call to the other service. And Istio will manage all the certificates authorities, all the certification revocation, all the certification updates, everything. So you as a developer are just using HTTP, and Istio will do the rest automatically, transparently to the developers. So you want to use Istio, don't tell your manager that you're going to do testing in production because it's going to say no. But you say, hey, do you want to make the communication more secure? And probably say, oh, yes, of course I want it. Okay, then you've got Istio, and then you're going to start moving to the, if you want, progressive delivery. So how this works, because you say, oh, how this magic works? Basically, it works because of the concept of sidecar container. With Istio, every time that you are deploying your application, you're attaching another container. So your pod contains two containers running. I know that this has changed recently because now there is the Istio Ambient, which lets you run the same thing without a sidecar container. But it has been ready for production like 1 week ago. So yeah, okay, you can run it if you want, but I still encourage you to use the sidecar approach. And it works like this. You've got the pod, and you've got two containers. One container is your business logic, your service, and then you've got the sidecar container. This sidecar container basically intercepts all the network traffic. So every time that I make a call from service A to service B, what I'm really doing is making a call from service A to sidecar container A. This sidecar container A sends the request to sidecar container B, which will send a request to the service B. And the response goes in the same way. So for this reason, I said that transparently, your communication is encrypted because here it's HTTP, but here when you arrive here, this transforms to HTTPS, and the HTTPS requests out to this other sidecar container, which can be another node. This sidecar container will decrypt, will make an HTTP call to the service B. So this is why, or this is how Istio works. So now let's start see a bit of Istio. If you want, you can scan this QR. It's just a demo. I'm just going to do it. You'll see some kind of, I think that by default is red bubbles there. Let me see. Okay. It's not scanning, but in any case, it works, yeah? Now you see red bubbles, right? Just going here. Let me find this is the URL. So you see something like this, right? You see all these red bubbles there moving. Now, I'm going to deploy, I'm going to move to the new version. The new version basically just takes the red bubbles and move to blue bubbles. It's this shell script. I'm just redirecting traffic to V2. Now I'm going to show you in a few moments this, but you will see that now all our blue. Okay? So I move it from one version to another one without undeploying nothing. So if I go here, I do kubectl get pods. Okay. You see that I still have the bubble backend V1, the bubble backend V2, but I am only sending traffic to V2. The V1 is deployed, not released, but it's still, there running. Now, I can show you the here. I can show you this file. You see that I'm just sending all zero traffic to V1, 100% traffic to V2. Now, let me show you another example. I got it here. Apply Joseph, and I'm going to say this one. Now let's see. In my case, I'm transitioning to red. Everyone is in red or someone is in blue? Blue? Yeah, of course. You're in blue because you're in a mobile phone. So what I've done here, I'm going to show you. You see here, I'm just saying, let me do it bigger, saying if the user agent is Chrome, then move to V1. If not, goes to V2. So I'm in a Chrome. So since I'm in a Chrome, I'm in red. But if you're not in Chrome, then you are in blue. So you can see that it's not. I've not done anything. I've just applied a one YAML file. That's the only thing that I did. And I just changed how the traffic behaves into my application. Now, let me delete or deploy this. I'm just removing this example. And I'm going to deploy another example, and I explain you. Okay, now, one of the questions that I got all the time is, okay, I've seen that you are transitioning from version 1 to version 2, and it's great, but can I do this automatically? Because now it's like, okay, I need to create a YAML file saying 90-10. Then I create another YAML file, 80-20, another one, 70-30, another one, 50-50, and so on, and just doing kubectl apply, kubectl apply, kubectl apply. Can I do this automatically? And yes, you can do this automatically using Argo Rollouts. Argo Rollouts is a project, is an operator that you install it, and basically it lets you make this transition automatically. Argo Rollouts, you define your application that says, hey, this application needs to be automatically rolled out. Then you define also where is your monitor data. So, oh yeah, I'm using, I'm using Datadog, I'm using Prometheus, whatever you're using. So you say, okay, this is my monitoring tool, and these are the metrics that I want to compare. For example, the error codes, and said if there is, different between this version and the old version in terms of error codes, then stop the rollout. But if the error codes are similar, then continue with the rolling update. Okay, these things that you can do. Just keep in mind, and that's a bit, I don't know why, I mean, I can understand why they did it in this way, but that the object now is named rollout. So you're not deploying a deployment file. Okay, what you're deploying now is a rollout file, which is like a deployment, so it's the same fields, but as you can see here, it offers some kind of extra fields. For example, here in the strategy, I said, I want to do a canary release. First of all, when I do a canary release, make or send 20% of the traffic to the new version, 80% of the traffic to the old version. And I want to be there in 1 minute. So during 1 minute, it's going to be in this way. Then after this minute, move 50-50 and wait 2 minutes. So during 2 minutes, I'm just going to send 50% traffic to V1, 50% traffic to V2, and just continuously monitoring. And depending on all the things, how it works, then the rollout will continue or not. And finally, in this case, Argo Rollouts integrates with different proxy technologies. And here I'm integrating with Istio. So I'm saying this traffic is managed by this virtual service that is named primary in the bubble backend. Okay, this is what I'm defining here. Now, let's see the same example as before. I think that the URL is, I don't know, it's this, maybe it's not the same, wait. I think it should be, oh. Wait. I'm not, I mean, yeah, because I've got some, yeah. I've got some things with the certificates. Now, you can see that I'm sending all the traffic to the bubble backend, the first bubble backend, which is red, great. Now, I'm just going to start, let's say, the transition. And to do the transition, I've got here a script file, which is rolling to V2. And also, rolling updates comes with a plugin named Argo that lets you visualize somehow how this transition works. Now you see that I've got the revision one, which is the stable, and I've got the yellow one, which is the canary. If I move here, you see that now I'm sending 80% of the traffic to the red, 20% to the blue. And now we need to wait. Remember that I said wait 1 minute. So now if we wait 1 minute, you'll see that this is transitioning to another, to the 50-50. Here you see all the information. And yeah, let me show you this file, how it's done. You see what I mentioned, that I've got here the strategy. I said 20-50, 1 minute, and then 50-50, 1 minute, and then done. And here is what I mentioned it before, that it's always the same content as you might find in a deployment file. Here now, I think that has been a change from 50 to 50. Let's figure out here. You see that now it's 50-50. I've not done anything, and automatically, Argo Rollouts changed the virtual service, changed the YAML file. kubectl get virtual service. You see, this is the virtual service. And if I'm fast enough, virtual service, this -o YAML, you see that it's doing 50-50. If we wait 1 more minute, you'll see that this virtual service is updated automatically to 0-100, I guess. Okay, well, we'll leave it here. In 1 minute, we'll see. Because now I just want to, do the let's win down, because I know that with this bubbles example, it's super cool, but your applications probably are not bubbles moving around the screen. So just keep in mind that state is always hard. When you've got a shopping cart and you've got your shop, then, okay, yeah, you might not want that a user just lose the shopping cart because, oh, we detected that the new version has a performance issue, so I just switch you back to version 1. Oh, what is my shopping cart? Oh, bye. Nah, that's not the way, right? So state is always hard. I recommend you using InfiniSpan, Redis, any kind of this distributed memory cache. And if you just start with the stateless services. I'm sure that you've got the stateless services. Start with them because it's easier. Go step by step. Okay, so don't just say, let's do everything automatic, right? Let's put Istio, Argo Rollouts, everything. No, start with the stateless example and a step-by-step saying, let's do kubectl apply of 90-10. I'm just going to observe, checking the monitor, say, oh yeah, it seems that it works. Okay, let me do a kubectl apply of 2080, step by step. And when you're confident, then automate everything. Finally, embrace GitOps. You've seen that there's a lot of YAML files or JSON files out there. So embrace GitOps, put everything in YAML. Use, in this case, I recommend you ArgoCD for managing all this stuff automatically, so you do not need to do kubectl all the time. And finally, you've got here the demos. This is the bubbles demo. You've got here all the instructions, the shell scripts, and everything to make it run. And if it's always okay, here, finally, we've got all the blues only and not the red ones. Here, you see that the revision one was scaled down. So it was just sent it to 0 traffic. The YAML file is 100.0, of course. You see that now the old canary becomes the stable. You see that it's not canary anymore, it's a stable. And always remember that in this case, if you're using this approach, Argo Rollouts automatically also undeploy the previous deployment. You see that now there is only one deployment, while in the other example that I showed you before, the pod, I was just changing the traffic, but not undeploying the pod. And that's all. Thank you very much for coming. And as I said, I will be around, so if you got any questions, I will be happy to answer.